Awesome. Devin, thanks for coming on. This is the Quality Values Podcast. We met a long time ago in Reno. You were friends of my advisor in college. You came in for a couple of guest lectures. At the time, you're talking about connecting and establishing yourself in the business world, and you've continued to do that. And it's been almost a decade since then. So you came out with a book recently, Connection Expansion book. I want to just start there. So I've heard that these days the book is like the modern day business card. Is that something that you relate to? And then what does this book demonstrate as your business card?
Yeah. Thanks, man. First, yeah, thanks for reaching back out. I know we were talking before you hit record. Like it's so awesome when those old relationships rekindle. And so it's fun to be here. It's fun to see you living and doing what you're doing. And that's epic, man. So I wear two hats, right? One, I do the connecting and building networks. The other, I do help people write, publish, and promote books. And having worked with 60 clients last year directly as a company, we did 130. And then being a client myself, writing a book, it really is one of those things I wish I had done for every other company I've owned. Like the second I launched the company, because it is the quickest way to solidify credibility and build authority. And yes, it's a business card. Matter of fact, we joke at trade shows. They'll ask like, "Oh, do you have some literature or contact info?" And we'll be like, "Yeah, it's right here." We'll grab the book with the bookmark in it, hand it to them, and they're kind of like, well, wait a second. Like, where's the info? And I'm like, that is the info, right? Like it has our calls to action. It's full of value. And then what happens at trade shows, right, is they like put all the crap into one bag that they empty over the trash can when they get home. And the book ends up in their like purse or their laptop bag because it's kind of taboo to throw a book away. And so I'm addicted. Like I love books. I love watching clients leverage books. It's been epic for me. It's built a 7-figure funnel in the last 120 days. Like it's epic, man. Like if you've ever thought about writing one or not, you should. And then this book was my way of getting extreme clarity in my own system and process for connecting and then sharing that with the world, because I want to empower so many more people to build strategic networks.
Awesome. I'm curious a little bit about books in general, and then I want to dive specifically into your book. But how do you get the book out there as a business card? Is it more about when you get it out there, it's a higher hit rate, you get a little more in depth with people, and so it's a higher quality interaction, or does the book actually help your reach as well? Are you getting more eyeballs from the book itself? Do you have marketing through it?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question, man. So first, we always tell people it's not how many books you sell, it's how much revenue you generate with the book. And so there's a mindset shift. A lot of people want to be best-selling authors, and that's easy on Amazon. Like we will give you the strategy. There's a way to do that. You'll launch, you'll hit bestseller. But that's not the key. The key is how do we use the book to grow our funnel, to nurture people in our funnel, or to open doors that maybe wouldn't have been opened because maybe they didn't perceive you as credible enough. And so for me, some ways that I use the book, I did a partner event in Reno for women entrepreneurs. Awesome event, awesome people. And we partnered to give every attendee a copy of my book. And so it's this win-win for both parties. It's a win for the event host because they're adding value to every attendee with this, $15 book. And for me, I'm getting my business card with a call to action bookmark into the hands of 100 potential clients. And so that is amazing. And what was great is she had folders on every chair with stuff from every other sponsor. And it was all like flyers and business cards, right? But then the heavy thing in there is the book. That has resulted in sales, booked meetings, social outreach, and follow-up all from one meeting. Another thing, so I've got a package sitting next to me right now. I got to put out in the mail tonight. I was on a meeting with someone and they're a really top tier podcast host, right? Which I'm sure you're going to climb to. And, he's like, hey, I'd love to get a copy of your book, but I'd love to get a signed copy. So can I buy one? I said, no, forget that. Let me mail you a copy, right? And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, man, like, let me put it in the mail. So I'll mail him a copy. Then he's going to give away a copy to his network. Well, great. So now it's double marketing, right? It's marketing because we're talking about it. It's marketing because he's giving it away. It's marketing because it's in his hand. Like it's this sticky thing, man, that just like opens doors. The other thing that's happening is there's no friction. So when I get introduced to someone, when I get asked to be on a stage, when I'm exploring a partnership or a sponsorship, there's no friction anymore because they're like, oh, this is the guy. And whether they know I'm the guy because I was referred or the book is helping, it's probably both. But having the book is only the start, right? And so a lot of the clients we work with, they think like getting the book published is kind of like, yeah, we're done. That's the finish line. Like, no, like that's day one. Day one is now you have this tool. Let's go use the hell out of it.
I love that. There's kind of two things I'm thinking from what you're saying. There's one book I've read, and I love books in general, but one book that stands out for me is The Revenge of Analog. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That's about kind of just the value in like old fashioned cameras, with the film and all that, record players, but also books as opposed to all this digital stuff. And then the other is one of my favorite marketing lectures all time, Seth Godin, Remarkable Purple Cow. And the whole idea is if you're driving, you see a purple cow, that's something different, something unusual, it stands out. So it's remarkable in that you would actually go and tell your friends about that. You get to dinner with your friends and you say, hey, I just saw a purple cow on the drive here. If there was a really big cow, you might notice it, but you wouldn't remark on it. It's interesting, not remarkable. But yeah, so with the book, you've got this analog device that at trade shows, you're giving it out. Everyone's got all these knickknacks, but the book stands out. It's a little different. It's different than a business card. It's a big tangible thing that you can get into. So that's super cool. I want to dive into your book a little bit. It's called The Connection Expansion Book. And I always knew you as a connector. I don't know if you even remember this, but you were a guest teacher at my college. So you'd given out your information, or I got your information through my advisor, Rick, I forget. But at some point I needed a job. I sent you an email and you met with me. We got coffee. And the next week I had like 3 interviews with people you set me up with. So I really appreciated that. And I mean, I can attest you're really talented as a connector. So what led to you writing this book? Why did you choose now's the time to write the book? And then after that, let's get into what the book is, what you preach in the book.
For sure. Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I'm always trying to add value, and I appreciate that feedback, man. Anything I can do to empower the people I'm meeting. And what I found is connections are the best way to do that, right? Both parties win because they're either finding a new employee, they're finding a new business partner, they're finding a new client. And in all those cases, both parties are happy, right? And so the book was born out of my first company. So I had a marketing agency, right? We were in the SEO digital space, crowded space, very noisy, very hard to compete. And what I found is, sure, I could do presentations. Sure, I could edify and elevate. I could do some of these things. But what started to win was adding value to people and focusing on everyone else and really shifting the way I network, the way I sell, the way I follow up to be others focused. And by being others focused, it started to unlock these really crazy opportunities. And I started to find myself in better rooms with no competition, speaking at events with no competition, being at trade shows with no competition, being referred to organizations and areas with no competition. And all of a sudden, like I'm looking around going, like, how did I end up in these rooms? And then the last decade has been perfecting that, right? So what are the scripts for networking? What's the follow-up process? How do we control the process? How do we add value? How do we get follow-ups? And the result of all of it is getting an influx of inbound connections so you don't have to cold call, and it will outpace all of your other marketing and sales efforts. And so that's what the system does. And, I work with $1 Million Author and do my consulting. And with $1 Million Author, I had worked with 60 clients last year, 60 plus, right? And I kept watching them like crush it with their book and get clarity through the process and all this stuff. And finally I'm like, dang, like I got to do it. I've got to double down and do the thing that all these people are doing. And so I committed, and 45 days later, the book was published. That was in October, I think, of last year. And it's just been a whirlwind since, man. It's opened up so many great conversations, including this one, right? Where you were sitting there going, man, you've been active on social. Like, we got to sync up. I love that. And so that's really what inspired me. And then I kind of planted a flag in the ground 3 years ago to help facilitate 1 million connections. And in order to do that, I've got to get the book and the strategy into the world, because I have to empower more people to come along that journey with me. Because I can only do a couple thousand connections a year myself, right? So I need others to surround that mission and push it to be real.
I love that. And I want to jump back into that. That's kind of, I would say, the the next level, the next lever in your growth. But something you just said stuck out to me, being others focused. I want to dive into that. This is the Quality Values podcast. So the core question is, what are your values in the context of your story? So I'm just kind of filling in context as I go here. And when I sense the values coming in, I like to dig in deeper. So what does that look like? You mentioned that, but can you give me like some examples of stories that where you being others focused helped facilitate connections, help make an impact, and kind of help drive things forward for you and for others?
Yeah, for sure. And let's talk about, so there's 5 core principles in the book, and I think this will give you, this is super aligned with your podcast. One of them is always add value. That's the first one, right? And it's the most critical. We'll talk about it. But we've got control what you can control, never make assumption about relationships. There's value in every relationship, and you got to train by doing. Those are the 5 core principles. Those are all built on real key foundational elements of the system. The always add value comes from this. If we think about sales, networking, business development, so often we're focused on things we can't control, right? Metrics that are outside of our reach. If we go sales, we can make it really dramatic, right? Like if you're selling a product or service, you can't force anyone to buy from you. Like that's a true statement. I can make it easier for you to buy from me. But if it's not a right fit, if it's not the right time, if it's not the right price, if it's not the right need, the person's just never going to buy. And so when you look at the whole process, one of the core principles is control what you can control. And as I started dissecting networking and how you get people to book meetings, right? So if you go to a networking event, the goal is to have them give you your contact info. From the contact info, the goal is to book a meeting. From the meeting, the goal is to nurture the relationship to generate some sort of value, right? That's what we want. So often people go to networking meetings and they're pushing business cards or they're positioning to sell. And if that's what everyone else is doing, I like to be the contrarian, right? I want to be the one looking at that going like, well, one, it doesn't feel right. Like I don't like getting into a conversation and having a realtor tell me that they can help me when they haven't even gotten to know me and don't know I already own real estate, right? So that's weird. Or the B2B person who's trying to tell me how amazing they are. And you're like, well, you don't know what I own or what I do, right? And so that started to plant this idea that like, man, there's got to be a better way. And so a little bit of a BNI exposure too, right? So being in a networking group and hearing the Giver's Gain philosophy, reading some books and like seeing giftology and some of these concepts where it's about others. I was like, man, you know what? Like, can I take this idea of being about others and doing referrals and package that into a system that aligns with my value of helping others, right? Because one of my core, most prominent values ever, period, is I want to help others. And so if I'm doing a business, it has to help others. If I'm doing something, it has to help others. If it doesn't help others, I don't want to do it. If I don't like it or think it's ethical, I'm not doing it. It has to help others. And so that's where that always add value came from. And it really shifted the sales process. And then I saw all the barriers go down. I had more conversations at networking events. I booked infinitely more meetings. I was getting connections right after meetings from people. My network's building itself. I'm getting connected to people that are so top tier, like they won't even take meetings with most people. And somehow they're like asking to get on my calendar because I'm all about the other person and I'm never looking for this sale. I will let the sale happen, but I'm never forcing it, right? And so this mission is great because now I can prove it. Like I have a decade of experience. I have case studies with the Cat Cafe and how we launched it so quick and so affordable with a great network. I have countless stories of people who like will reply to me and be like, hey, like what's the catch? Because my email script is so much about the other person. They're like, well, okay, so yes, but no, there's no but. Like, let's get together. Let me get to know you. Let me make connections just like you experienced. And if you never provide value back to me, I don't care. Because I know statistically, if I do enough good, I will get a return, right? And what I can control is the doing good part. The universe will deliver the return, right? But I've got to do my part. So hopefully that answered. I know there's a lot there.
Yeah, no, I love that. So can we dive a little bit more, just focus specifically on that book? So can you go through the outline of the book? And I love doing podcasts with people who've written a book because they've got their ideas organized with a table of contents and all that. So what are the sections of the book? Like what's your full process from a macro level?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for calling that out too, because that's one thing I tell people, like the biggest takeaway from writing a book other than being a tool is clarity. And even for me, it's a true statement. Like I have extreme clarity in my process and how to talk about it now. I did a presentation. This is a little aside, but I did a mastermind presentation this morning to a good friend of mine's mastermind group. And it was my first time presenting a full presentation that's aligned with the book. And it was dynamite. Like it was like mind boggling. And I'm a pretty good presenter and I get pretty good feedback, but like saying it was a slam dunk is probably an understatement. Like these are the testimonials. I'm just going to share a couple because this is like so crazy. And you said it. This is a rewatch, even being here live. That's like a comment 6 minutes into the presentation. I just got out of a paid networking course relationship with a host and just learned more in the last 30 minutes than I did in their whole program. Can't wait to watch the recording. Thank you. 5 minutes in, and this is already mind blowing. Love your system and clarity. Truly one of the best trainings we've had. Like the only reason I can get that feedback is because my clarity in the system is so dialed. Right. So just sharing that on the book part. Now about the book goes through chapter 1's the referral dilemma. So we talk about you want more referrals, but you don't have a system. It's not predictable. That's most people's reality. So we're going to set that stage and then debunk that and give you a system. We talk about the connection expansion exercise, which is shifting our ask so that we have a better ask when we're networking, which will unlock the ability to have people connect you without the friction of being sold. We then go through the process. So we go through how to network effectively, how to follow up effectively, how to conduct a connection meeting, right? Very specific language there on connection meeting, how to do that correctly, how to follow up from that meeting, how to nurture long-term, how to support that with your contact management system. So your CRM or task management system, and then a couple quick action activities and all the email scripts that support all that. So that is the book. Those are all the different chapters. And so I just tried to write the book walking you down the journey from a networking event all the way to long-term nurturing and then giving you everything in between. So the exact email scripts I use, the exact way I conduct meetings, the exact questions I ask when networking, it's all in there. And as I live my life, right, always add value. Dude, I tried to pack as much value into a quick read as I could because I didn't want to hold anything back. Like I wanted people to read the book and be like, dang, I could implement this. Like this is something I could run away with. And then if you want help, I'm here, right? But if you don't, dude, just go do good in the world. And if 1 out of 10 people reads the book and just starts doing it, the ripple is going to be amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Real quick, the one detail you in there stood out to me, the connector meeting. What is that? You emphasize the phrasing there. How does that work?
So often if we think about people's sales cycle, right, they have a first meeting, right? Or a discovery meeting. There's a lot of language around what that first meeting is. The problem is so often that first meeting has a sales connotation attached to it, where it's like, I'm approaching this meeting with the goal of moving this person through a journey to buy something. And therefore I'm trying to position and I'm trying to like demonstrate the features or benefits of my product or service or my expertise or my credibility. It's all about how I'm tackling the meeting, right? Now I do all those same things, but I do it in a way where you raise your hand and want to buy from me and you feel super comfortable because the connection meeting's all about the other person. I want to ask you questions. I want to get to know you. Matter of fact, I deflect all the time. Like if people try to start the meeting and take over, I'll answer quick. And then I shift back to no, I want to control the meeting and I want to make it all about you. I want to learn about you, your story, where you're going, what's in the way. So it's a connection meeting because it's about connecting. It's about the relationship. It was amazing. I wrote this quote down on another podcast I was on. The host said, you know what pisses me off? When people say it's just business. Because it's never just business. It's always a person involved. And I was like, yeah, that's it. Like, that's why we call it a connection meeting, right? Because it's people, right? Who's buying your product or service? People. Who's fulfilling your product or service? People. Who do you do business with? People. It's all people. Yet somehow we get into this digital world, especially with social media, paid ads, and all these funnel hacks. And we start to turn people into numbers or people into things. That's weird, right? Like, let's get back to just like people working with people. And so that's why it's a connection meeting. And I'm really specific on, I want you to connect. I don't want you to sell. Now, if they raise their hand and they need your product or service, please, right? Like, please sell to them. But that shouldn't be your intent. They should be the one to ask, right? Hey, that all sounds great. Jake, could you sell me that? Like, I need that. Okay, great. Yeah, please be a good salesperson. Fulfill the deal, right? But I want you to connect first.
Yeah, that's awesome. I find that people, I've moved a lot, and it's always the people. There's people ask me like, what's the best place, and it's not so much the place, it's the people you meet, the interactions you have, the connections you make. So that definitely resonates. Have you always been a people person? Have you always known that you're going to be, focusing on people in your work and personal life?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been an extrovert, more or less. Like, I would say I'm an extroverted introvert, right? Like, I definitely like my quiet time and to be left the hell alone sometimes. But like, I'm definitely not shy. I am the one that, like, no matter where we go, I'm talking to someone and meeting everybody, and I just love people. I have a journalism degree and an English degree, and I went down the journalism path because I just love stories. Like, I've always been a fanatical reader. I just am so captured by stories, whether it's Harry Potter and a long legacy book, or, quick, like, fantasy. Like, I just love story. And so the combination of loving stories and people, like, I just knew that in order for me to keep my energy high and just be super passionate about what I'm doing, whatever I'm doing had to involve people. In fact, I did an internship when I went from high school to college. I declared as a dual engineering major. And then I was great at math, right? Like, did the AP Calc test, missed one question, like, really good at math. I did a 1-day internship, and I watched the engineer sit at his desk all day and talk to nobody. And I was like, this is hell. Like, if this is what I have to do for 20 to 30 years, that ain't it. But I had been running the school newspaper, and I loved it. I got to meet amazing people. I got to get in rooms no one else could get in. Like, I got to, like, it was so cool. And so I changed my major to journalism. And I remember my parents, thank God they're supportive, being like, cool. So you went from, like, the most profitable, highest paying industry to literally the cheapest, lowest paying industry. Like, that's fantastic. And so, yeah, man, like, I think it just gets back to, like, you got to be true to who you are, and who I am is, like, I love people. I love stories. And so now I get to play in all of these worlds that's surrounded by amazing people, helping write stories. Like, this is all I do now. Like, it's so fun.
On the flip side of that, like, you mentioned your math guy. Is that an Aura ring that you're wearing?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a trainer. So I've worked with some people who use those, but that's a number, that's just gathering data. You've kind of alluded to metrics in your sales process as well. Are you, so there in the social world, you're in the sales world, you're in the networking world. Do you find yourself kind of using more rote mathematical systems to organize and navigate your way through that?
Yeah. So if it's not trackable, it's not scalable, right? And so this is, I've got a few superpowers, and one of those superpowers is I am a visionary and an implementer. I can think very big and very future focused, and I love launching projects and businesses, but I can get super granular and system focused as well. And because of that, I can cast a big vision and then build the system with the trackable metrics to make sure it works. Because there's nothing worse than running down a path with an idea and a gut feeling, which is great because that can motivate you to make a lot of good decisions. But you gotta refine the system. And so I track everything. And I'll share some metrics because I think this is fascinating, right? Like, we're talking about connections, which is a little bit fluffy. Like, it can feel not very tangible, right? Because we're just talking about relationships and people. But this is how it turns into metrics, right? In January of this year, I conducted 52 first meetings or connection meetings, right? So 52 connection meetings in January. I made 98 introductions or connections following those meetings to support the people I met with. So it's about 2 per meeting. I received 27 inbound connections. 7 of those inbound connections were super qualified leads, and 2 of those turned into paid clients just in the month of January. That doesn't carry over to what they've turned into long. And so like, yeah, we're tracking everything. Like I'm looking at every metric, every meeting. How do I optimize it? What's the right meeting length time? Like everything has to be trackable in a system. Otherwise, like I don't want to do it because it's got to be scalable.
From a technical perspective, how does that tracking actually work? Like you've got the Aura ring that's convenient. You just put it on and it does the rest. But um, when it comes to inbound connections, it's like I reached out to you on Instagram. I'm sure you've got people reaching out to you through all sorts of channels. Um, yeah, how do you congregate all these different metrics in this sort of loosey goosey social world?
Yeah, so this is our 2025 AI project, right? We're like knee deep in it right now. And so I've got the dashboards and everything's manual right now to like really dial in the things that are important to track and the things that are vanity metrics. And so we've been doing it with the CRM, which does pretty good at some of it, but not all of it. And I've been in a few CRMs testing like which reports and dashboards are best. And so now we are creating an AI powered CRM solution that tracks how many new contacts we had, where they came from, whether it was a direct connection. We're tracking size of connection. We're tracking throughput. We're tracking how many connections deep people are. We're tracking connection tiers. Like there's some really cool stuff coming because we're just geeking out on it. Because I shared in the presentation, I have this Power of One moment. This is crazy to me. And I didn't even get to the beginning. I shared like we closed this $30,000 book deal, which was great, like phenomenal client. I can't wait for their book to come out. Such a cool story. And I went 6 connections back to track how I got to this person. And I still wasn't even to the first connection. Like that was just as much as fit on the slide. And so now it like really got me scratching my head like, damn, like I want to be able to know that. Like I want to know like, okay, this 50th connection in turned into a client. In between this client and the 50 connections, it was 77 podcasts, 6 events, 800 connections, and whatever else, because that's super cool to me. And so right now it's manual. And for like the average listener that's just going to scale up their network, like your CRM will be great. The metrics you're tracking will be great. But like, you got to remember, we're doing this at like 10 times probably what you'll do. And so now we're really leaning into AI to help us build dashboards and metrics to track it all and to systematize it all in an ultra scalable way. And so my goal is to compress the time to follow up to 1/10 of what it is now. And so that will impact our ability to make more connections, do more follow up. So active project, it is a problem as you scale it up. Again, for the average listener, a person just growing their network, not super critical.
That's really interesting. What's like in the engineering behind that? Are you using like APIs through ChatGPT or like I've been trying to build mini versions of this like for tracking analytics and stuff like that, and I'm just kind of scratching the surface. So, like when you say you're using AI to generate this system, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I've got 6 partners right now exploring different ways to make this a reality, and we're going to figure out which one's best. And it's probably going to be a collaboration in there. And so I've got a guy who does like really cool AI things in the sales and content creation world. And so he's exploring like how we could build a standalone dashboard CRM for this that solves this problem and is duplicatable. We've got a CRM partner that we're looking at that we're already in, but we're looking at some like additions and APIs. I've got a funnel automation expert looking at how we could automate some of the follow-up metrics. And so we're just like, I'm really leaning on the brain power in my network right now to figure out like, I want it to be such a simple solution because it's a very simple system. Nothing about the system is complicated. And so whatever we design has to match that. Like it has to be so stupid simple. It's no different than my connection group. Like it's just real people, real connections. There's no other fluff. And so the output will have to be that. So I'm just tapping into the brain power, man. Like I've got amazing people. I'm just going to let them be amazing. And then we'll cherry pick the things that work. Hopefully in the next 30 days, we'll be in beta on something to figure out if we can really turn this into something, really interesting.
Yeah, that sounds super cool. Are you familiar with Michael Lennington?
That name sounds familiar.
12-week year.
Yeah. Okay, that's why.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had him on. He's kind of similar. He's also doing he's got lightningdraft.com. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
No, I'd
similar
love to
kind of
connect with
thing.
him.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I can connect you through. I mean, I just did a podcast with him yesterday. I released it today, but
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
he also I reached out to him on Instagram, and that's how I got a hold of him.
That'd be dope.
Um,
Hey, can I give you let me give you another AI thing since we're on AI because I
yeah,
think it's fascinating. So
I love it.
I had a challenge from a guy. You'll love this and you'll geek out on it. And then I did it and it was fascinating. I had a challenge. I was on, we were talking, it was like our sixth follow-up meeting from just like connections and adding value to each other's worlds. We've done amazing stuff together already. And he said, hey, I've been playing with GPT to build a calculator to show the value of using my system. And I was like, that's fascinating. And so he showed me what he designed in it. He's in the podcast world, right? So he helps people launch and scale podcasts. And so he was showing like if you launch this many listeners, this much growth, this much revenue, blah, 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 blah. And so I went to GPT 45 minutes later. I output one on tapping into the power of your network, where you go in, how big's your network? How many referrals do you get? What's your average value for a client? And what's your average close rate? What's your average value for a client? You hit calculate and it outputs how much value you're actually getting out of your network and how much you could get. And it's a great tool to position future sales. And all of that was done in 45 minutes with the GPT. It gives you the code. You just copy and paste the code in your website. So just a little nugget for the listeners. Like
Yeah.
if you are not creatively thinking about how to abuse the AI right now, like that calculator probably was like a $5,000 project 24 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty insane. And it's getting better at such a rapid rate. So I'm trying to stay plugged in, and it really helps having these conversations. I love hearing how other people are implementing. Um, so I wanted to circle back to one of your big goals that you mentioned earlier, the a 1 million connections. I'm curious, how do you even track that? Like, and how's your progress been so far?
Yeah, so it is part of what we're trying to visualize, right? Like I know who I've connected with who and who's connected with who, but I don't know the next tier. And so I know like we'll hit it just somewhere, but I won't be able to benchmark it yet. And so I am facilitating a connection group that's a little more trackable because it's a group of people helping people. And so we're going to start tracking that so that we can actually see how many connections are being traded in the group and how, what that looks like. So we're just trying to get this like idea of the core focus. But I liked a million because a million's really double that, right? So a million connections is really like there's two people involved. So it's really 2 million. And so when you think about like 2 million people collaborating, like I can't even fathom the impact that has in the world because we're talking jobs, incomes, marriages, relationships, best friends, partnerships, income, nonprofit donate, like it's trillions of dollars in economy. It's probably tens of millions impact in actual tangible other relationships. Because if one partnership connection succeeds and both companies have to scale, we're talking about new employees all making more money, which is more and so like it's just a number that's big enough that makes me think about like, damn, like we could really move the needle and impact so many people. And so it's so far out there that it forces me to optimize my life to chase that vision.
I want to dive a little deeper into that. This is technically a philosophy podcast. That's the genre I have it under. And I don't know if you've read Thinking Fast and Slow or any of those books that kind of talk about cognitive heuristics and all that. But part of it's like certain things in modern society are just hard for the biological human to conceptualize and to like properly account for. Like compounding interest is something that you can explain it and like you can understand. And maybe if you've experienced it, like you kind of have a feel for it, but it's hard to really like accurately understand from a pros and cons perspective the value of compounding interest. And same with microbes, like or viruses, things really small. People can either not take them into account or overestimate the power of them. It's hard to really accurately gauge the impact they have. So I'm interested, like when you're setting out to make a goal to connect 1 million people, you're trying to make an impact that's like kind of beyond the scope of what you can really understand, what you can feel. And I'm curious what the reason is behind that. Like what do you think is it that drives you to want to like offer something to humanity beyond the scope of your own existence?
Yeah. So, I have a video on my YouTube that capsulizes part of this, but let's talk about it. So, and I'll try not to cry. I'm thinking about my dad as I answer this, but my dad passed and I had to stand on stage and this was recent and have that conversation of like, what did my dad leave? It's not, it's about the memories, the impact. It's so much more than like the tangible bullshit. And for me, that dash is critical, right? So sure, I was born and I died and there's a dash. And I want to have such an impact in that dash that everyone can genuinely stand up and say, at some point in my life, that guy impacted me. And in fact, I want people celebrating and winning so far away from me that they don't even know I'm the one who impacted them. Because that to me is a mission worth living. That's a life worth living. Sure, I want to make a bunch of money and I want to pass legacy on to my kids. Yes, I want to own nice stuff. I want to do nice trips. I want to create amazing memories. But I want to create such a big impact that it's undeniable and that I have no clue how big of an impact it is. And I want to do it ethically, and I want to prove that you can make a whole shit ton of money while you do it. And so it's this really fun challenge. And that idea of like, is what I'm doing today having an impact? Is the activity I'm doing now having an impact? Is the business partnership I'm exploring going to have an impact? And if it's not, it's either too short-sighted or it's just not aligned with my mission, vision, and values. And I don't care. I don't want it. And so I'm really, really focused on the North Star, the whatever analogy you want to use, right? But it's that dash. And so that to me is my motivator. Like I have been blessed and I've had so many people open doors for me and pour into me in my life. And so I feel obligated to give back, but why give back equal? I might as well give back as much as I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's honestly with these conversations, that's what I'm looking to know. It's like what's underneath it all, and say that's really cool. I wanted to. This is kind of an aside. I know we've got a few more minutes, but I wanted to talk about the actual technicals of publishing a book. I wrote my first book. It's a poetry book, so it's different. It's I'm not really trying to get clients from it or anything like that, but I don't know anything about it. And I was just curious, like my plan is to self-publish it on Amazon. I was curious, have you done that? Is what's the least expensive way to get a book in print and ensure that the quality is where it needs to be? I have images and stuff.
Yeah, so great, really good question. The technical of writing a book surprises a lot of people. The book writing process in general, it's not hard to have the idea. It's not even hard to get it into writing, although that is a time barrier that a lot of people get stuck in. But you have to understand, right? Like it's got to be formatted, and there's 3 primary formats it needs to be in, right? It needs to be in ebook, which is one format size and publishing. It needs to be in paperback, which is a format size and publishing because the cover is different. And it needs to be hardcover. You want it to be all 3 because you never know what people's preference is. And so you want to align with whatever their preference is. You don't want to assume. And then we publish all of our clients' books, including my book. They're all Kindle Direct Publishing. And so our clients control their own publishing. We do it for them, but it's all in their account, like mine set up in my own account. Amazon's the best. And let's get into like some really fun stats that business owners don't know and your listeners probably don't know. Why Amazon? A lot of people hear traditional publishing and they think like New York Times bestseller, USA Today bestseller. Yes, that's great. If you're a celebrity, if you have status, if you want to sell 1 million copies, great. You need to go down those paths because that's typically what's going to unlock those things. If we're using a book as a tool or we're using it to just get into the world to align with our mission, vision, values, things like that, then Amazon's brilliant. Here's the crazy part. When you buy my book, so if you go to Amazon right now, Connection Expansion Book, Devin Sizemore, you'll find it, and you purchase any copy of the book, other than the ebook. So if you purchase, I guess, the paperback hardcover, the book doesn't exist. Amazon will print the book tonight, pack it tomorrow, ship it to you, and it'll be on your doorstep in 2 days. That's why you go with Amazon, because you don't have to inventory books, and they print and ship on demand. Like, they have built the most fascinating machine in the book printing world. Because I looked at doing a book 15 years ago, and I had like a minimum quantity to buy. I had to warehouse it. I had to ship it myself. And I was like, this is cost prohibitive, and I don't have time for that. The other side of it is cost. Right. So let me grab a book just so for like visual. So like, here's a copy of the book, right? So 115 page book. We write really simple, easy to read, high value books. This book retails for $15, right? Do you know what my cost of this book is? Like, this is mind boggling.
I have no idea.
Yeah. So this book cost me $2.35.
Wow.
And so that's why you go to Amazon, because I've yet to find a printer. Matter of fact, I have a buddy in the printing industry, and I said, hey, like, I just ordered a bunch of copies of a book. My book cost me $2.35 paperback. It's like $6 and change hardcover. And he's like, dude, I don't know one printer who could print your book, matte finish cover, 115 pages for that price. And I'm like, yeah, that's why we work with Amazon. So Amazon's the 9 million pound gorilla. And again, unless you're trying to sell a bazillion copies, start there. And even then, a publisher could pick it up and move it over anyways. So yeah, that's the way to do it. You can partner with people to format it for you. There's a lot of best practices for titling, cover, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it is the best place to publish. There's a lot of resources to help you format it for that. And then it's fun. Like, I get royalties. My last royalty checks came from 9 countries, or 9 Amazon platforms, which is crazy. It's crazy to think that my book's being sold in India and Australia and New Zealand. And like, it's bizarre.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Real quick, just on the formatting, again, more just technical question, but I've got a PDF version right now. And that the fact that yours only costs $2 is crazy. I went to a local print shop. I do a poetry group, and this is a poetry book. I was going to print out copies. There was like 20 people in the group. And so I said, how much does it cost? And they sent me a quote for, it was like $36 or something like that. And in my mind, I was like, damn, like they must be printing this out like on a magazine type paper, you know, like loose leaf paper. And so I responded, and it was kind of an old school print shop, you know, so I was just emailing them. They didn't really have a portal or anything. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I'll come pick up the copies. And they're like, no, that's just for 1 copy. I was like, oh, never mind. I don't want 20 copies.
You're like $500 later, right?
Yeah. I was like, no. I was just I was going to hand it out. I just gave people a QR code to access the PDF. But, do you know, so it's all color. Every page is full color. It's white text on colored backgrounds, but can Amazon do that? And do you know how I would convert the format from a PDF version to color, ready to go in paperback, hard copy, and ebook?
Yeah, so they can't do full color. We have a lot of clients who do like really vivid images and stuff in the books. The price will go up a little bit for print. So like mine's print, I don't have color, so it's a black white interior. So that's why it's super, super affordable. But even then, if you double the cost, still like $5 for a book is crazy. Yeah, I would just go do the research on formatting for ebook, formatting for paperback, formatting for hardcover, and it'll give you the specs. And then the biggest decision you have to make is book size. And what I tell people is just go to the library and figure out what you like. We do all of ours in the 5x7 size, because it ships better. And it's the right business size. But like, if I look at the business book, like there are 14 sizes on my shelf, probably. So like, just grab the one that feels right for you. If you're writing, especially a fun book. And once you pick that out, then I would just, there's probably a freaking AI bot that'll do it for you.
Yeah. I'll go do that. That's, I really appreciate it. These are pertinent things that are on my to-do list. As far as books that you've read go, books on your shelf, what are some of the ones that have had the biggest impact for you?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, devinsizemore.com, I've got a book recommendations tab. And so there are client books, client examples, recommended books on there. I read so many books because I read all of my clients' books too. And so last year, I think we do the calculation, it added up to like 170 books or some really stupid number. So it's really hard to read for fun, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't get to read a lot of non-client books, although that's shifting this year. Growing up, let me reference some books that like stand out. So 3 Feet from Gold, which is the follow-up for Think and Grow Rich, was an amazing book. I really like the narrative flow of it. It's a lot easier to read than Think and Grow Rich is. That book stood out to me because I felt like every page had a nugget, especially for that point in my life. And it really spoke to this idea of not giving up, which I think, as a young entrepreneur, right? I was 20 or 19 running a business, like, you need that message. And so that stood out. I've enjoyed The Magic of Thinking Big, which is like compounding decision makings. That's interesting. I don't know, man, like just read everything. It's so hard for me to like pick one. Cause like I said, I just read so much. I just read a good friend that they've become friends, Leading to the One. Really cool human management book. Fascinating. There were some really cool analogies in there. Like I'd sent them screenshots. I was like, dude, I took pictures of your book. Like there's parts of this that were like amazing. Man, I just love all books. I'm really enjoying like the Profit First book series right now, and that approach to running a business. Those are interesting. Everything John Maxwell writes is fascinating to me, because he's just such a thought leader. I love reading biographies. Like I love digging into people's stories, even if those are longer books. Now, I just like it all. And so there's a good snapshot of books on the website. And then, yeah, I've got, I don't know, probably another 100 recommendations.
Yeah. Okay. I'll definitely go check out your list on devinsizemore.com. Last question before we wrap up. What are you hoping to accomplish in the next year? What are some of the medium to long-term projects that are on your plate that coming down the pike? What are you excited about?
Yeah. So the biggest is, we've got the Aces Connection group. I've talked about it a couple of times. Like that is my core focus. I've done a lot of high ticket offers in the last year, and I've done really well with them. And I had this moment of like, man, you know what? This is a values thing, right? And this is why I'm sharing it. So I had a mentor, and I can charge quite a bit. Like I have a pretty good reputation. I have a really good case study log. But I had this moment of like, you know what? I want it to be accessible and scalable. That's how I've had success in all of my companies. And so although, yes, I want the high-end offer and I want to drive maximum value and have big profit margins, like you have to have that for sustainability. I was like, you know what? I got to get back to the core, which is how do I attract people and impact them greatly? And so that's where the group was born. And I'm in love with the group, man. Like it's so good. It's $100 a month. We meet every week and we are generating millions in revenue through connections, strategies, and resources. Anyone's welcome. I don't care if you're a college kid. I don't care if you're a billionaire. It's $100 a month. So very low barrier to entry, and I want people to come play. My vision for the group was just to scale to 100 members this year. And I think we're going to hit that in the next like 30 to 60 days. So I've re-anchored my goal to 1,000 members. And so we're going to chase 1,000 members this year. And then we're going to see what that becomes. Maybe some in-person events and retreats, maybe some private groups in there, maybe some industry specific groups. We're doing some really cool group stuff. So for me, playing with that idea of like, what's 1,000 person virtual group look like? And how do we add as much value for $100 a month to every member as we can, which is a really interesting equation. We're having so much fun with that. And so we're going to scale the hell out of that. And then the book writing side, like we want to help at least 300 clients write, publish, and promote their book this year. And so if that's something someone's thinking about, like if you want a book to add to your marketing sales stack, I'd love to chat with you. Again, obviously I'm an advocate. I can't not be because it's worked for me. It's worked for the clients I worked with, but like, I'd love to just chat. And like, if it's for you, great. As I promised, I don't sell anything. Like I'm just going to, if it's a fit, sure. Then I'll present the opportunity. If it's not a fit, I'll match you with people where it might be a fit. So those are kind of our two like numerical goals we're chasing. The group's fun. The book writing's amazing. And then, spend as much time with my family as I can.
I love it. How can people find you? You mentioned devinsizemore.com. I'll include all the links below, but devinsizemore.com, Devin Sizemore on Instagram, right?
Yeah, so my handle on all the social platforms is DP Sizemore. So Devin Patrick Sizemore. So DP Sizemore. DevinSizemore.com has links to everything else. Connection expansion books on Amazon and the audiobooks there. If you want to listen to me talk for another hour and 54 minutes, you could do that and just put it on in your car or while you're going to sleep. Either way.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm an audiobook guy, so I'll check that out. I avid Audible. Yeah, I'm addicted to it. Well, awesome. This is really cool, Devin. I appreciate you coming on. It's awesome to reconnect. It's been a long time. So thanks for coming on, and yeah, thanks for sharing all your perspective here.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm so glad you reached back out. Your questions are great, dude. I'm fired up to watch you grow and see what you're going to accomplish. You're doing amazing work. You're already connecting with amazing people, and hopefully there's a couple nuggets here for people listening. Yeah, and if you've got a question, I'm happy to either connect you with an answer or provide an answer for you.
Awesome. Thank you.